I don't think that I would actively hire females to do a job just because they're females. I think that for me as a business owner, I want to have an amazing business. And so it's about finding the best crew for the business.
So today we are joined by Charlie on our podcast. So Charlie Avara from Build by Charlie. So delighted to have her on the podcast for a few reasons. So Charlie is an advocate of bringing women into construction and helping to create an environment that encourages younger women to actually consider this as an industry to work in. We all know this is a very male-dominated field, so I'm really, really interested to get into that with her and understand from her perspective of being a female in the industry what that's been like. But also Charlie has got over 20 years of experience in construction, which is quite unusual for a female, and is running her own design and build company, Build by Charlie. So welcome to the podcast, Charlie.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Cool. So I want to start with an interesting thing I kind of read about you, which was that you made a kind of mid-career transition, or maybe an early career transition. So starting in the kind of I think the kind of TV media industry to actually move into construction, which is, I can imagine, are very, very different. What was that like for you at that time? I think we're talking nearly 20 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
how was that at the time?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a conscious decision, really. It wasn't something, it happened very organically. I have been working in TV since I graduated uni, and so from 21 onwards, and I actually have moved out to the US to continue and pursue my TV career. And I think I was around about 32 when I was in the US. I was doing some TV work, and I kind of, that had always been my ambition. That was something that I'd always wanted to do. And then when I actually was doing it, I thought, wow, this isn't actually what I want to do. And that was a really scary place to be because, by the time you're sort of 32, most of your friends are well on their way in their careers, or they are establishing a family. And there I was on the other side of the world, wanting to change complete direction, but not knowing what I wanted to do, and being sort of, on my own with that. So that's where I found myself. And it was only because I had a dinner with a friend of mine who had a construction company, and he was I was really lost, and he was sort of saying, look, just describe your perfect job. And I was really struggling because I didn't know what job I wanted to do. And he said, no, just describe your perfect day in a job. And so I said, well, I don't want to be I don't want to be stuck in an office. I'm not interested in doing a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I want the job to be project based as opposed to just, the same thing over and over again. I like to be working with, a team. I like to have a client, because these are all things that I had done before. I wanted it to be very practical. I'm not very sort of good at sort of writing and being on the computer and all that kind of stuff. And he then offered me a job as a project manager in his design and build company. And, I had said to him, I know nothing about construction. And he said, look, you don't really need to. You have got all these transferable skills that you can bring to project managing. The guys, the electrician knows how to run the cables. The ground workers know how to dig the trenches and put the foundations in. The bricklayers know how to lay the bricks, but you know how to coordinate a project. You know how to organize, how to plan, how to budget, how to schedule. These are transferable skills that you have gained, in your TV work, and those are things that you can bring to the table. And so, in all honesty, I was totally out of options. I didn't know what else to do, so I took him up on his offer, and that's how I got started in construction.
It's interesting actually, because as you say, and you were talking about, you're describing your ideal job, and obviously I don't know exactly the kind of TV work you were doing, but that is kind of project based. It isn't a traditional 9 to 5, so a lot of similarities actually now that you put it in that way, right?
Absolutely.
I'm we will kind of delve into I think the aspect of your experience as a woman going into that industry, but I'm curious about now that you look back at that, and now that you have your own firm, and as it grows, you'll be employing more and more women, I would imagine, as well.
Hopefully.
How do you feel in terms of like, because traditionally I think this happens a lot where you, as business owners, construction business owners, we would take somebody from another industry because it's quite hard to find somebody with the skills, in construction. And that happens a lot with women. Like, you might find a friend that's working in another industry and kind of pull them across. So I'm curious if you think there are other industries that as business owners we can look at as opportunities. Okay, maybe somebody working in this field or that field would be really good as maybe in a project management role, maybe in another kind of office or operational role.
So many of them. I think there are certain skills. If you're a tradesperson on site, then you need to have those skills to be able to do that particular job. And that's either you learn from, as a kid, or young person, should I say, on site as a labourer and working your way up. And interestingly, I make a point with any of the young people that I bring on. I will discuss with them. Okay, you might be a labourer now, but what is the job that you think that you most want to do? And I will make sure if they want to go into carpentry, or they want to go into roofing, or they want to go into tiling, or then I make sure that I really encourage them to go in that direction. I work with the tiler or the carpenter. But when it comes to more general skills, like the office management, or the project management, I think those are general skills that go across the board, and you don't have to have the experience of working in construction to do that. You could be working in, well, as I did, in sort of video production, and television. Those skills you can transfer. It was I'm trying to think now. If you're trying to think of any other industry, I mean, if you're working in healthcare and you then and you lost your job, or you were made redundant working as a healthcare provider, if you are doing anything that is project led, then those skills are with you. You can move to any industry with those skills. But I think that we often don't, especially in the UK, we don't consider those skills as transferable. And so when you do your CV, it's focusing on, I worked in the healthcare industry, or worked in TV production, or and you're sort of pigeonholed into, okay, you've only done that. That's what you can do. That's the industry that that's where you need to be focusing on. Whereas actually, I think in America, they do consider the skills that you as a person have and can move careers. I remember some statistic. I'm not sure how true it is or how accurate it is, that in the US, people change their careers up to about 8 times, whereas in the UK, it's about 3 times, because you get pigeonholed here.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in the US, they have a different attitude. It's more about the skills of the person, not the experience of the industry that person has worked in.
Yeah. I think I want to stick with this topic a bit because I think there's a lot of value that listeners can get from this idea of like attracting talent from other industries, because especially with women, because there's it's I don't know if it's 50% of our workforce, but there's a whole number of people that you could potentially bring into your business. And
Yeah,
I know from speaking to a lot of construction company owners, they're desperate to find somebody that they can just trust with running the firm. Now, I think you're a great case to get feedback from, because you made your way up eventually from the PM to being the MD of this company before you left. So when looking at trying to create an environment where, because I'd imagine it was kind of a little bit overwhelming for you to go into construction, but obviously you had your friend that you could trust that this company was going to kind of take care of you, so you made that jump. And in your case with Build by Charlie, obviously you're a woman founder, so it's obvious that for another woman you're trying to kind of attract into your company. Obviously it's an inclusive environment because the
of
owner is a
course, yeah.
woman. But for those that don't have that luxury in terms of like being a woman, or they don't have a friend like connection, what can they do within their company to make it I guess an attractive proposition for a woman to not feel overwhelmed, or whatever those feelings that maybe you had when you started out going into the industry, because I think it's important to try to get some kind of insight from you, because I think some of these company owners could implement some of these things to potentially attract the talent that they're trying to get.
Well, I think it's firstly about the culture of the company. Um, you know, and I can only talk from experience from a small, we're a small firm. You've got some much bigger corporate companies which have more money and more resources to be able to throw behind their recruitment policies, and the education of the business to be able to encourage and mentor women. Whereas, for smaller firms, it's about just changing the individual culture of that company. So I think with the larger firms, if they are looking to recruit, it's about making sure, for example, that the language in their advertising and in their job specs is more gender neutral, that they are posting those, or they are actively encouraging the HR departments to be looking at, females that apply. It will be about making sure that there are females on the interviewing panel, for example. So, and actively looking to change the culture of the company. For smaller firms, it's a lot more, I think, a lot more difficult. The individually owned firms like myself, but so many others, which are traditionally male owned.
Yeah.
I think it is about, women such as myself that are going to get the message out there to be able to say, hey, look, we have a skill set which can really benefit your company. Let's take the gender piece off the table and look at what are the skills that individual person has, and do they fit the needs of your company, regardless of whether they are male or female. It's going to take some time. It's not. This is not an overnight process, and I don't think even in. I think construction is one of those industries that is so far behind so many other
Yeah.
industries. So this is not an overnight process. This is not something that's going to happen quickly.
Can I ask, just to try and hone down your answer a bit more? in
Sorry.
terms of the context, no, it's fine, because I think it was a very broad question, right?
Yeah.
So if we were to focus more on the, not necessarily individual fully operated, but the smaller side of the company, so, maybe there's only 2 or 3 people running the whole office.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps give examples of culture that is negative? Because I think a lot of guys listening to this will hear what you just said and think, well, I kind of don't know what you're talking about, because we're men and we've been in an industry that's full of men and it is kind of just normal. I think a lot of what you're talking about, it must be so normalized to a lot of men that they may not actually realize they're doing it. And it may be unintentional. So
yeah.
I wonder whether there's, and maybe you can look back at your own experience and say, oh, actually, I remember this used to happen or this used to happen. And I think that will bring into awareness. Because as an example, when you may know, my wife was my business partner, and she used to, similar to you, run the jobs, run the construction side. I would occasionally visit site, maybe, don't know, maybe once every 3 months. I would show my face. I wasn't very present on site, I would admit.
So she was on site.
Yeah. I was not.
Oh, wow.
I was not running the jobs at all, really.
Right.
But what was interesting was, and I never saw it, and she only told me this after. I would go on the site, and the guys would never really speak to me. They would know I kind of I existed. I used to kind of, do contracts and stuff like that, but I wouldn't really get involved in the site. But I would go on the site together with her, and we'd talk, and they would just talk to me.
Oh,
they wouldn't even look at her. And I didn't realize, honestly, I didn't realize it. And it was only when she told me away from them, and then I went back, and then I was like, that is so true. We're both standing there, and they're just looking at me. And and she's been talking to them for the last 3 months every day.
Yeah.
And he's telling me about, this problem with this pipe and this clashing with this. And I'm thinking, I don't even know. I know what you're talking about roughly, but she actually knows 100 times more about this situation, but you still
But he would
talk to me.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
And
so I wonder whether there was kind of, it sounds like that experience happened to you, but if there's other things that...
I think that it's you can't, you can't blame the guys for doing that. I think and I think that as women, we just have to have a thicker skin on that. And I would expect it to be your responsibility in that situation to, if that was happening, to then defer the answer to your wife. It will be your responsibility as the business owner to then say, oh, I don't know, what do you think? And allow and give the space to your wife, who you have trusted and is managing the business or managing the project, to then, answer. And so in time, that culture within that business will shift. I've been on site. There's been a few things that really stand out for me. I can remember one time I was on the roof. We were waiting for the steels to arrive. It was quite a big loft conversion that we were doing, and I kind of looked out over the side of the roof just to make sure that the crane was in position and that the lift was going okay. And the crane operator just looked and was like, "Oh, look at it!" Like, and all of the guys started to laugh, and I just thought, I've got 2 options here. I can either be offended, or I can just laugh it off. Ultimately, I was on site overseeing the health and safety and the management of that project. I was there to ensure that all of my guys were equipped and safe whilst we were doing this lift. I had to toughen up. I just ended up seeing that poor man. What a shame he's got such a narrow mind. If I had, reacted in a sort of a defensive way or in a negative way, then I just think that I would have lost a bit of credibility. I just toughened up on that.
Yeah.
I had this one incident where it was a really complicated project that we were working on. And it was hard. I'm not going to say it was a really difficult project, and the timelines were tight, the conditions were difficult, and I was in charge of the project. Towards the end of the job, the client said to me, "Oh God, you are such a Rottweiler," and I knew in that moment that he meant it in a disparaging way. He and I thought to myself afterwards. At the time, I didn't react, and I thought and it really stuck with me. But I felt deeply wounded initially, and I was offended by that comment. But then I thought to myself, I think that's an attribute. You're managing a hundreds of thousands of pounds of your client's money. And if he thinks that he wants, a Labrador to run the job, it's not going to get across the line. We've completed that job on time, on budget, and to a really high standard. And it takes sometimes a bulldog or a Rottweiler to make that happen. And so what he said to me, which was meant to be an insult, I mentally flipped that to be actually something quite complimentary. But that is the kind of unconscious bias that you do as a woman come across from, the workforce and from even your clients,
Yeah.
and I think it's about just not allowing that to have too much of an impact. You've got to have a Teflon surface sometimes and just let that stuff roll off. Take from it what you need, take from it what's positive, and just let the rest kind of go. And you can't change everyone's opinion. You can't change everyone's mind. So you just have to stay focused on the bigger picture as a woman. Stay focused on your journey, and you cannot. But I think this is the same in any, not just in the construction business, but in life in general. You can only be responsible for what you put out in the world. And if other people want to put other stuff out, energy towards you, you have to, and it doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve your purpose and your focus, then you just have to let that shit go,
Yeah.
But that takes experience, that takes resilience, that takes confidence in your own ability. And when you are starting out, that kind of unconscious bias can be really wounding. It can be really difficult.
So I think a few really valuable things that myself and others could take out of what's just been said there. Firstly, some of the characteristics that you just reeled off at the end there are perhaps essential characteristics that those looking to hire a woman or a man in their company is important to have. And particularly a woman, it sounds like, going into the industry needs to be able to have that ability to kind of, recontextualize something that comes in and take it as a positive. So I think that is a really useful kind of insight. I think the other thing, which you sort of mentioned at the very start of that question, which was about the owner. I mean, it doesn't have to be a kind of husband and wife relationship. It could just be, project manager and let's say operations manager. But then when they are aware of situations like that happening, actually taking action to correct that in some way, or even acknowledging that, goes a long way. I think you're saying in creating an environment where that female feels like, they're supported by their kind of higher up, and I think that goes a long way. And I think actually going back to like that situation after my wife told me, I actually remember, I can't remember who it was, but I physically like grabbed his shoulders and just pushed him and turned him that way and said, I don't
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
ask her. And I
Yes.
think that is the kind of thing
And it's
that
up to
it
you
can
to
mean a lot, right?
empower. You have to empower. You have to, and it comes, that kind of attitude comes from the top down. It filters down. You have to, from the culture is set by, the senior management team. And so if the senior management team are not actively conscious about promoting the females in that industry, then it's you know, that will just filter down. So you did exactly the right thing by just saying, I don't know, ask her, deflecting. And it's about then, and a lot of it comes down to ego. I think, I think it's about the management team. I mean, if the management team being able to accept that from if you're a male in the management team and you have a female on the team, being able to understand that you don't have all the answers, and it's okay not to have all the answers, and it's okay to defer to the female that's on the team that may have the answers. And I think it's all about the culture of the business and understanding that it's a team, and you might be the project manager, but you might not be able to answer the more technical questions about, the mortar mix that is being
Yep.
used, and you defer to, the brookie to
Yep.
discuss that. But equally, you don't. The tradesmen need to understand that the skills that the PM, who may be female, are bringing to the table, are different. They're not going to know. They're not.
Yep.
Everyone is a team. It's a team effort.
Can I
Yeah.
ask Charlie? I want to just dig in a little bit on the question around upskilling and like gaining technical knowledge, because over those 20 years, I imagine you've had to learn a hell of a lot. And, you don't have a traditional construction background and you have not come from the tools. But what has that experience of kind of having to learn about the industry, about terminology, about technical things, kind of on, not maybe not on your own, but within a kind of company work environment, what are you then applying to your company, and how would you advise others to invest, or how can they invest in like teaching their, let's say, non-technical team about technical things? Because the traditional way of like, I'll just chuck them on the site for a month and they'll learn, it doesn't always work. That's not always an option. So, what can we do to teach people?
Oh, I don't. That's a difficult one because I was very much chucked on a site and made to learn.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, very much so. So, my first project, I was, once I started working for this design and build firm, I was partnered up with another female project manager, and I basically sort of just, she mentored me, and I followed her to client meetings and to site meetings, and I just literally sat back and just observed. And together we were working on one particular project, and it was a swimming pool, and we sold the design and build of the swimming pool, and the design element didn't really take that long. And so we were coming towards the end of the design phase and going into the construction phase, and then she left the company, and it was left to me to continue running the job. And I was probably sort of 8 weeks into the job, something like that. And I can remember, the JCBs rolling into this client's back garden and starting to dig a hole. And I was absolutely shitting myself because I didn't know. I didn't know. And there was nobody for me. There was no one to hold my hand. There was no, I had my, the guy that hired me, I would meet with him once a week and be like, okay, what do I do now? And he'd be like, well, this is the process. This is what you need to do. And, and there was a larger team, office team that would help me to sort of schedule the right people at the right time. And there was a site manager that was helping to, and there was somebody to help buy the materials and all that kind of stuff. But I would take it upon myself every single, twice a week, every week, to walk around and speak to all the different trades and just be educated by them. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why are you going this deep? What's happening here? Asking all the questions from all the different trades. Because I had to basically feed that back to the client. So I ended up setting up a client meeting once a week on site and basically regurgitating all the information that I just learned from all of the trades, begging and hoping that they were not going to ask me any other questions because I wouldn't be able to answer them. And it was a real baptism of fire. But I think that you have to take your own responsibility, for learning your industry. If you are choosing to work in, or you have found yourself working in a certain industry, such as construction, but it could be anything else, then if you see a future for yourself in that business, then it is your duty to yourself to learn whatever it is that you feel like you need to learn. I'm still learning. Every single project that I do is a new slate, and there is always something to learn. And after 20 something years, I still feel like I'm learning something new.
So would you say like that you'd still recommend that approach of, because obviously you were put in that situation, but is that what you would still suggest is the best way as a
business
owner?
owner? No, because
Okay.
the expensive mistakes could be made,
Yeah.
and I think that that's probably
So
not
what
the right
would be
approach.
I guess like the hybrid approach you would take as the business owner, because you are now. What would
Yeah.
you suggest as the best way?
Well, if
Really
you're taking,
targeting
sorry, go on.
somebody, if you situation like if you had employed yourself right now
Yeah.
as a woman, no kind of real kind of insight into the industry, but just the kind of the transferable skills to be able to run that project. What kind of infrastructure do you think the company needs, and investment does the owner need, or the operator, to be able to get that person as quickly as possible
Up to speed.
capable of running the
Yeah.
jobs?
Yeah. There is no classroom substitute for on-site experience. You could sit in a classroom all day long, but get into the field and it's a completely different. You can learn all about health and safety, and then you get on the site and you realise that things on site work very differently to what's happening in a classroom. So, I think it's important to mentor. I think it's important to buddy up with somebody else. I mean, it was an unusual experience for me. I felt very much on my own, and it was up to me to learn, myself. But if I were to hire a 30-something as a project manager that had project management skills but no site experience, then I would make sure, as a business owner, that I would do the education pieces on things like health and safety, and they are job specific. But I would also make sure that person had another mentor within the business that they could shadow, that they could work with, and I would have regular check-ins with that person. giving them the opportunity to ask the questions, to voice their concerns, to feel supported. And I think that actually is relevant if it was a male or a female. I think that's just good business practice, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that is just good business practice.
I had a when I came from a engineering background, but a bit of experience on site, but mainly in a classroom. And the first company I worked for was a tier one main contractor, and then they had a lot of resources. But one of the best things I think they did when they employed me, I think it was the first year I did a rotational placement. So it was on one project, few £100 million project. So it's a big project, but I spent 3 months in each department within there. So 3 months working under the planner, 3 months under the QS, 3 months under the site team, 3 months under health and safety, 3 months under environmental. So and it was so good because you sort of saw the same thing from different angles, and you started to see them connecting. And it's kind of got me thinking that perhaps as an owner you could replicate that within your business as well. You might not have different departments and different people running it as you would with the big projects, but sometimes giving that 360 angle of everything is really useful. And it might feel like painful, because it probably did with this company. They're paying me for 12 months, but I'm actually not doing my job. For the first year I was just rotating around. But when I did start on 12 months and 1 day in, I was super clued up with everything. If there was a problem, amazing. I knew exactly who to talk to, because I had relationship with the QS, I had relationship with the health and safety guy. So that kind of reminded me of that.
That's amazing. That how blessed you were to be able to have that experience. I think if you were working for a much smaller firm that don't have that level of resources, then it's just really down to the owner to ensure that they are educating their project manager. Come to me to meet a client. Come with me to the builders merchants. Come into this, join in with this meeting when you meet with one of the suppliers, or and just it would be my role. I would see that to educate and to inform that project manager so that they were as well-rounded and they understand all aspects of the business, dealing with clients, dealing with the guys on site, dealing with the suppliers. They require a completely different tone of voice, and that is something that you just learn. It's not something that can be taught. So
I think that's actually a good example of what you just said in there, of how an owner could apply those principles. But just join me in meetings, let me just CC you into this document so you can just see what's going on, because as you said, you can start to pick up, he talks very differently when he's talking to the labourer or the site foreman compared to when he's talking to the client. What's the difference? Why are they different? Why are they using different language? So valuable. Okay, so I want to move the conversation on a little bit. I want to, I guess, I'm not particularly concerned about being, politically correct with things, but I do want to preface this question with the fact that I'm generalizing about male and female traits here. But I wanted to ask you, I think a lot of people listening to that first segment of this podcast, listening to some of the challenges as a female, would be listening to this and thinking, oh, well, fuck that. Why am I going to hire someone that's going to have all those challenges? That if I just hired a man, he wouldn't have those struggles and challenges. Okay. And again, I'm generalizing here about that, but I wanted to ask you, because you've started Build by Charlie, and very openly branded it as a female-led contractor, or a female-led company, I should say. So I wanted to ask you, to those listeners that are maybe thinking, well, does it seems like more headache to perhaps, I don't want to think it, but to hire a female in there, what would you say are some of the general benefits that you might see generally having that female, maybe traits that they might have on site and dealing with clients that a male might not have, again, generally speaking, because you've obviously seen them, because you wouldn't be putting it on your website and promoting that and speaking to clients about the fact that you're female led if you didn't kind of see a reason for that. So I'm curious your perspective.
So I can only talk about who I am and what I bring to the table. I don't necessarily think that male business owners don't bring this, or male builders don't bring this to the table. But the feedback that I get from my clients is that working with a female is a different experience to working with males. There are certain specific things. For example, I will give more time and help with the clients when asking them to make certain decisions. So they might say, I might say to them, okay, I need to know your lighting plan. Yeah, that is the need. I want the electrician is booked next week, and I need to know where you want your spotlights. As a female, when I'm working with clients, especially, I very much take the attitude of first of all, I take the position that I am privileged to have this job, that this client has chosen me to manage their build project, and so rather than seeing it as this is how I make my money and that's it, I see my job as a team. We are creating something amazing that this person, this family has asked us, trusted us to create for them. And I see that as a collaborative process, which I lead because somebody has to lead it. But everybody, from the labourers to the suppliers to the site manager to the client, all have to input something into to be able to create whatever it is that we are creating. And I don't know whether this is a female trait or whether or not this is just me, but I want to give each and every person the time and space to be able to input their whatever it is that they need to input into the project. So when it comes to the client, if I say to them, okay, here's your kitchen layout, how many spotlights do you want? They wouldn't have a clue. They wouldn't have a clue. So I would sit and take the time. Let's talk it through together. Let's have some, let's look at the plan. I would suggest that we do this, this, and this, but it's going to cost, every spotlight is going to cost this much. So maybe you might want to have, if the budget is tight, you might want to have a track light with multiple spots on because it's only one electrical feed, whatever, guiding and holding your client's hand throughout the process. Understanding it's not an ego thing. It's just understanding that you have skills that they don't have. They have hired you to bring your skills and knowledge to the to the project without ego. But then as the project manager or company owner, you need to respect that these people don't know what they're doing and support them in making the right decision. What is the right decision for the project, for the outcome of the job? And I think that sometimes guys might be more about just getting the job done, and rather than empathizing with the client and understanding the turmoil that they're going through, and just helping them, being more empathetic. I think that is that's the thing.
It's funny because if someone
That's
could
not
see
a
that
very
screen here, it actually, I've written empathy there because
yeah.
having it's a difficult one, I think, to answer clearly as well, because I feel like a lot of your experiences, both as a female and somebody coming into the industry not as a person on the tools or not as a construction person, has led to you being able to deliver this service in such a way. So it's become a benefit, and they overlap. So they're not like solely because you don't have tools experience and solely because you're a woman, but it's kind of a little bit of everything. I think from my personal experience of being in the industry, and particularly working with domestic construction, where usually the client is a layman. The woman, if there is a husband and wife dynamic of the client, the woman is usually the person that is making the decisions, and that decision might be, in the background, and then it filters through the husband, and then he tells you, or the woman is the one choosing the lights. So I think there's something, we found as our business grew, of pushing the whole fact that it's usually a woman to woman conversation, and typically most women would feel more comfortable speaking to another woman if they are not sure about something and they're not clear.
Going back to that Rottweiler comment that my client made, it was a husband and wife, but he was the one that was leading the project. He was definitely, the wife wasn't overly involved, and I think he actually felt intimidated by the fact that I was a woman, whereas I've never ever had any such comment or felt any kind of negative energy from the women that my female clients. It just, there is that, we will sit down and we will have a cup of tea and we will talk about other stuff, family stuff. When you're dealing, especially with domestic work, I think that the thing is to understand that this is a deeply personal experience. You're talking about, doing somebody's home using their hard-earned savings. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a, 200, a £2 million project, or you're talking about a £30,000 project. In any case, you're touching somebody's home and you're working and they're giving you their hard earned, money. Yeah. And so it is a deeply, deeply personal experience, a deeply personal journey. And if you only make it all about the construction site, it kind of takes the joy out of it. I find that as a female, I have more patience with talking about all of the other aspects of their lives, which are being impacted by the construction. Oh my God, I can't wait until we get the washing machine back. Going to the laundry 3 times a week is a nightmare. I don't necessarily know that your client would discuss that with the male builder, but yet that's what is their concern. They're more concerned about getting the job finished because they need their laundry back,
Yeah.
And so, do you understand?
I do get to see where you're coming from, because and admittedly, I've really learnt this more and more recently, very recently, I think, actually, as I've got a young child now as well, and that always gives you more insight into what, in my opinion, a woman goes through, is that I think typically as a woman, that they're usually thinking like 3 or 4 steps deeper about the problem. And okay, this knocks onto this and this knocks onto this. And typically
Yeah,
there's more like going, and I think you're just wired that way to like think more
100%.
about these things. And where you're getting at, I feel, is that as a woman also experiencing that, there's more relatability as to, when a client is not responding to an email, not responding to a WhatsApp, perhaps, you might be able to dig in quicker to what the root of the issue is or what the potential concerns are, rather than on the surface, you as the builder might just think, well, why are they not deciding where they want the spotlights? I just need to know, like,
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
But there could be much more going in deeper
And
than
you
that. And I think, go on.
so maybe as a woman that you would then be able. I mean, I know I have done that. I have said, I really need to know where the spotlights are going to go because the electrician is coming on Thursday. What do you need from me in order to make that decision? Would you like me to come round and have a chat with you about it? And often there's a massive sigh of relief. Oh God, thank God for that. Somebody's going to hold our hand. I think it is about understanding that, if you are a builder, you're doing it day in, day out. Every project is, it's much of a muchness. For the client, this is like sometimes like a once in a lifetime. And so they just don't know. It's so overwhelming. And I think just having the empathy from for the client and offering to hold their hand goes a long, long way. And I think that is just an intuitive thing that females have. And in what you said earlier about being able to see things sort of, further down the line, that is definitely a very positive attribute in hiring female project managers, because, it is all about being a project manager on a construction site. It's all about foreseeing what's going to happen next week, the week after, the week after that. Any problems that you might occur now, if they're not resolved, they're going to be catastrophic, or can be catastrophic further down the line, or super expensive to fix. So being able to foresee those problems rather than just focusing on the here and now. This is the job I'm doing, and so this is what I'm going to do. It's about focusing on that job, but also, pre-planning and focusing on what's coming up. I think that is a skill that females have, which is imperative to effective project management.
Like people listening to this, I think as a man, you can, to be honest, I think you can take this however you want. I don't really care. But those of you that want to take something positive out of listening to stuff like this, I would say you can embrace this and actually embrace some of the empathy kind of skills that you might have as a man still, and just bring them out to your business. Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, we might not be looking for somebody to hire. We might not need anybody, but that doesn't mean you can't take what you have just outlined here and actually say, okay, well, maybe I can go home, chat to my wife about, what do you think that these clients are going through? What do you think that, she doesn't answer me? Or do you think when I talk to her in this way, it makes her feel that way? And then actually come back and still, approach it. Because I think, so you could easily just feel isolated listening to what we're saying. But I think it's actually, we're talking more about attributes rather than kind of like, this person has this and this person
100%.
is that.
100%. I mean, look, if you are running a construction project, I think that you're dealing with humans, and so you have to bring, if you're a bloke, you have to bring your feminine side when you're dealing with the female owner, and if you're a female project manager, you have to bring your inner Rottweiler. When you have to bring your masculine energy a little bit to the table, because you do. That's it. And
Yes.
so I think it's about being able to bring both parts of the masculine and feminine to the job. And I hope that doesn't isolate, some of the male business owners, a bit girly and whatever. I think that don't be scared about that. If you've got a daughter, you've got a wife, and you're trying to persuade your wife or your daughter to get something done. It's the same sort of energy that you need to bring to your client, and you have to switch it out from managing the way you're managing your team on site to the way you manage your client. And you're right, it is majority, it's female. It's the females that make the decisions when it comes to domestic work.
So Charlie, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Build by Charlie, because you've obviously gone from running essentially someone else's company to, Build by Charlie is a relatively new venture. What lessons have you applied from that company to now the way you've set up Built by Charlie, in terms of things that you're doing differently, things that you're trying to kind of replicate and do the same? We've talked a little bit about kind of the female side, which obviously we've spent a lot of this conversation. But how's the business set up? How does it operate? What does it do? And are there kind of specifics around what you're focusing on?
So starting with a clean slate has been hugely exciting, and but also terrifying. I went from running my husband's company that was already set up to clean slate, start from scratch. There's so much that I'm bringing with me in terms of the culture that I had already kind of established anyway previously. I very much feel like we're a family, and I know that sounds a bit twee, but when you're a small construction company, you have to feel that way. There is a culture of trust and appreciation for everyone's different skill set, and respect for everyone's different roles that they have within the company. Starting from scratch, though, I have now the ability to have a new brand, and whereas before I wasn't really able to focus on the female aspect, I feel like now at my age, with the experience that I have, I do see it almost as a responsibility, as a duty to not necessarily encourage females and women to get into this business, but to just show that it is possible, to be a bit more visible, so that it could potentially inspire. We have an aging workforce, and we really, there is a whole massive untapped workforce which are female that have not so far been actively encouraged to join this industry, and I feel like with the new company it is a responsibility for me to, especially I have a daughter as well, I see that as my responsibility to actively show that women are able to succeed in, not necessarily in construction, but just in a male dominated environment in general. I think it's for me, it's a personal legacy that I would like to leave.
So are you actively seeking to hire women trade people,
I would
or
love to. I would love to. They're like unicorns, you
really?
know.
Okay.
And so, you know, I have definitely seen a rise in more women working in the construction industry over the last 10 years. You know, you just need to go to the trade counters and the builders merchants. There are more women behind the trade counters. You know, there are more female architects, engineers, you know, building surveyors. There is, you know, and certainly in the back office, in the more office related roles, and working in with the suppliers, you know, definitely there is an increase. But trades, very few, very, very few. Decorators, plumbers, or gas engineers, decorating crew. But I only know of one female carpenter, and she's based down in the West Country. And I've connected with her, but you know, I'm in London. She's there. I would never have the opportunity to work with her.
I've got to ask, like, with, let's say, a groundworking gang, or you know, someone laying concrete blocks, physically, you know, a gang of 3 women compared to 3 men, where it's like, you know, such a physical job, the men would be much more productive, wouldn't they? And wouldn't make, like, it be, you know, so let's say you're doing 30 kg blocks,
Yeah,
or something where it's extremely heavy, and you know, on average, a man is going to be able to do lay blocks at a much higher rate.
100%, 100%. But we're
Is there
talking about
certain trades that
one
you're,
trade
yeah,
in an enormous industry. Yeah, definitely. You know, would if I looked at the productivity of a female versus a male, you know, ground worker, yeah, chances are I will go with the male, because they're going to be more productive. They're stronger. You know, yes, but that doesn't mean that the whole industry needs to
yeah,
exclude women just because there are a couple of
specific
trades
trades? Yeah.
that require brute strength. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's yeah,
So
that's
is that the sort of you know, the vision for the company to transition into a company where you have mainly female trades in
no,
running the
not
projects?
no,
Is
not
that not?
at all, not at all. It is not my vision. I am looking for whoever is the best person for the job. You know, it is not about um, you know, if I had two different electricians, and one was male, one was female, and you know, probably I'm that's probably not the right example. Um,
Mhm.
uh, I'm trying to think now of
Why would you say
which
the
trade.
electrician wouldn't be a good example
Well,
of?
because you know, I don't think that gender specifically would play a part in it at all. You know,
Yeah,
I can't see how, um, you know, why would I choose a male over a female? I can't see any reason why I would. It's about whoever's best at the
yeah. You
job.
just use the
I
traditional
just use the
metrics. How
person who's
much do
best at
you
the job.
charge? What's your
Exactly.
vibe? Do I get on with you? Are you tidy? That
100%.
kind of, yeah.
100%. You know, I don't think that I would actively hire females to do a job just because they're females. I think that for me as a business owner, I want to have an amazing business, and so it's about finding the best crew for the business. But I think that my role as a female construction business owner is to be an advocate for women coming into this industry, and I feel like it's important to bring a culture of inclusivity and diversity within my business. But that doesn't mean that I will exclude men just because I am a female business owner. It's about
Yeah,
finding the right people
makes
for the
sense.
business. And if there were more females, females on tours, I would love the opportunity to try them out one project at a time. And if they, you know, bring what they need to bring to the table, then I would be really, really delighted to be able to work with them. But I'm not going to discredit,
Men that are
men.
doing that trade. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
I think something that I can kind of foresee, especially as your business grows, is because this kind of one of the main things that everybody in the industry at the moment is struggling with, that runs a company, is retaining talent and
yeah,
getting the trades in. But
yeah,
actually, I think if you do find women that are doing certain trades and they're doing their job really well, I think there's a big advantage with Built by Charlie being able to easily retain these women in the organization, because it's very it's women led, but also
yeah,
all of the stuff that we've been talking about is there. So I can totally see this as being an advantage for the business, as you are finding these unicorns, to be able to kind of retain them,
yeah,
because as we know, it's not all about who's paying the highest day rate. It's about kind of how you're treated on site, whether you're getting paid on time, what the attitude of the client is as well. And the thing is, because you're the face of the company, you're seeing the clients, you're basically filtering those clients out as well. If clients got a problem with you as the woman running the company, then they're not going to go with you, and then that filters down to the ethics on site. I would love for any women that are listening to this podcast, that are in construction or thinking about construction, or maybe running a subcontractor, or running a set of trades, to connect with you. And
I would love
obviously anybody
to.
to connect with you as a businesswoman. What is the best way, Charlie, for people to reach out to you and connect, maybe for business opportunities, or maybe they're interested in getting you in to do work in the house?
The website, and our contact details are on the website, or on Instagram. The usual avenues, really. Email, but all those details are on the website. So it's
Cool.
builtbycharlie.com.
We'll drop it in the show notes, so anybody that wants to reach out to you can contact you through there. Thank you so much, Charlie, for joining me on today's podcast. I think it was
Thank
a
you so
really
much.
interesting session. I think I learned a lot. Reminded me a lot of things that have happened to me over the years. But I think for the right person listening to this, there was a lot of value to be extracting, especially for a kind of complex topic like we've been chatting about today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.